now that we've gotten an overview of what sort of trial matching solutions exist at the moment, we obviously want to talk to patients and see what their needs are, how they feel it is going right now, and really what is needed for a good trial matching system to succeed. So to begin with, I would just ask all the three panelists to shortly introduce themselves again, if there's anything that you would like to add to what how Ingrid just introduced you. And then if you could just let us know briefly if your patient community is interested in joining clinical trials at all, and if so, why are they? And if not, what is keeping them away from it? And for this, I would ask you in this order, Mary-Lynne, then Mitchell, then Dominic, if you could give us just a brief reply and give us a short overview from your perspective, that would be fantastic.
I think Ingrid's done most of the introduction. I've been around for many years, so I'm classified no doubt as a veteran, which is a nice word of saying I'm getting older. But never mind, I've been a patient advocate for many years, and I head the World Federation for Incontinence and Pelvic Problems. I'm also the co-chair of the European Health Coalition, which is quite useful because it's a multi-stakeholder group of people who are very much interested in lobbying topics for access to healthcare and so on and so forth. So you get quite a broad overview. If I stick to the remit for today, I noticed in the preamble it talks about the game changer. I think we do need a game changer. COVID has, of course, done lots of things to many of us, including me, but it's shaken up the whole healthcare scene. And in that, I think also the approach to clinical trials and how we match the various trials, the patient and the whoever's conducting the clinical trials. I haven't got a presentation, but I've actually written down a few things for myself. One thing that is always out there for patients is the knowledge base. Most people haven't a clue about clinical trials or what clinical trials entail. So that's a learning curve. I think there are many gaps in that, and that has to be addressed, and I would hope that PharmaLedger can do that. The transparency involved there and the learning curve is key to any successful trial and recruitment. The second thing is that recruitment is, I saw the figures there about the 80% and failure, and then the 30% of costs involved in clinical trial recruitment. Yes, these are key issues. How do you not only recruit, but how do you retain those people, the adherence aspect? And there has to be, for want of a better word, a carrot at the end of the day. There has to be something in it which will entice, I use that word specifically, people to become part of a clinical trial. There has to be an outcome, something that's in it for them. And that in it for them is very often, I have that case right now because my husband's going to join a clinical trial on prostate cancer starting this Wednesday. So it's very fresh in my mind. I didn't know that much about prostate cancer, but now I do. And the reams of paper and follow-up and the how, it's mind-boggling. It's okay for someone like me because I'm used to dealing with this sort of stuff, but the average person in the street isn't. So one of the key elements is simplify, make things transparent, make sure that the language that's used is acceptable, but that it's not childish. It has to literally cover the whole demographic range. That's another thing. And that there's something at the end of the day, which would encourage people to join a clinical trial. Why would you? It's more work, it involves time. Some of the questions here, would people be prepared to travel? Yes, to a certain extent. If they're able to travel given their specific medical condition, that's always priority. And how can you facilitate that, make life as easy as possible for the participant to actually become part of that trial? I think these are key issues which very often are swept under the carpet or not even considered. Many people are able-bodied and don't even think of how difficult it is. I know I got myself to Brussels the other day for the first time in 3 years, negotiating public transport and trains and steps and this and that. And quite honestly, it can be fairly daunting if you're not sound of limb. Your mind may be okay, but your body sometimes lets you down. So that's another consideration. Again, this aspect of anonymity and data protection. These days, we're all very susceptible and vulnerable. We know exactly that our data, we may think it's protected, and usually the gurus will tell you that that's not the case. So that's another consideration which really needs to be taken on board to protect that. And I think also, I don't want to talk too long because I know there are other people, there's a lot I could say, but I think the follow-up is often people are left in mid-air. They may take part in a trial. I've taken part in a big trial. It's a 10-year trial. And at the end of the day, you want some substance. You want some feedback. You want to know what's happening. And if that's not there, then the interest falls away immediately. And again, this adherence factor, I think, is important. I think that's enough for the time being. It's just given a few elements. I've got a lot more, but I don't want to hog the conversation. So, Jarke, I think that Hannes, sorry, when you're with, I haven't met you yet. I will do shortly at the Congress. But is that enough for the time being? And then perhaps pass on to someone else, and maybe we can come back again.
Yes, thank you very much. You actually already touched upon one of the next questions, which is what would make the trial matchmaking tool attractive for patients. So that is really good, and we're really much aligns with what we're going to talk about in any case. So, but maybe just to give the other two panelists a chance to give a bit of an opening statement. So Mitchell, is there anything that you would like to add to your introduction by Ingrid? And then could you let us know whether your patient community is generally interested in joining a clinical trial, and why not? And also, since we're already at the topic now, maybe already if you have a few ideas, what would make it attractive for patients in your community to try a trial matchmaking system?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Hannes, and thank you, Ingrid, for the introduction. So I'm indeed a patient expert with, I think, about now 15 years of experience, both as a patient, but also as a professional, where I actually also have been working a lot with a lot of patient organizations across different therapeutic areas. In the field of rheumatology, for example, but also in Duchenne or SMA, or actually very wide field of therapeutic areas, where most of the experience goes to, okay, how can we identify unmet need of patients and then come up with solutions to address these needs. And I think what Mary-Lynne just mentioned, I think a lot of the points that she mentioned, I also actually had on my list. But I think when we look to why are patients interested to participate in a trial, I think, or there's urgent medical need. Think about cancer, that with the current treatments, there's a bad prognosis and even often no options, and unfortunately in some cases. So there may be, there's also even a higher willingness from the physician to recruit the patients compared to chronic diseases. So I am also a patient myself. I participated in several trials, and even as a patient expert, quite knowledgeable in this field of research, it also took me about 2 years to really find the trial I wanted to participate in. Actually go to scientific journals, looking to who are the co-authors and what are the hospitals that are involved. So actually, you really feel that this whole experience can be improved. And I also think that when you look to reasons, again back to clinical trials, if you're looking to the chronic patient, let's say a patient with a chronic disease, I think the willingness or the interest to participate in the trial is somehow related to the level of the unmet needs. What type of unmet needs do they have? Is it something because they are, for example, in my case, I'm on daily high doses of corticosteroids. So my unmet need is, I would like to get rid of these corticosteroids to deal with the side effects. And this is my motivation to search for a trial. And for other patients that we talk about, it's maybe, I cope with certain side effects of a trial, of a medication that I get today. So the reason for me, the unmet need is actually these unpleasant side effects that I would like to find a solution for. So then going back to, how do patients find these trials? And I think, and as Ingrid mentioned as well, that's just a reality that a lot of patients do not know what clinical trials are. I think with COVID, of course, it has been in the news. You will hear some critical voices, of course, like always on social media. But at the end, I think what is really important is to make it just much more easier, much more convenient to the patient to find the trials. And also a lot of the information is in English. And if you don't speak English, it's just hard to find. I go to clinicaltrials.gov, it's always in English. And a lot of systems, they actually pull out this information. And in Belgium, what we actually recently did is a study to actually see, how many hospitals put information about clinical trials on their website, how many patient organizations do that. And it's only about 15% of hospitals and patient organizations actually mention some information about clinical trials. Only 2% of the hospitals, they actually embedded a search engine to search for a trial. 5% listed the clinical trials. So this is not; these are not high numbers. So this can really be increased. So this, I think, linking to your last question, what can we do to make it more attractive and accessible? I really think playing on this partnership with all the hospitals and making it in local language available, and to really integrate as much as you can in existing systems. Because I think one of the issues that we might see is that healthcare is a fragmented ecosystem, and it's very difficult to have one unified system. But if we could create the European clinicaltrials.gov, let's say, but patient-friendly, that would be fantastic.
Thank you so much, Mitchell. And I really can see that the topics of simplification and making it easier for patients to access trials is really on the forefront here, and really also to make it more understandable for patients to what is available. So Dominique, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you, Ingrid and Hannes, for the preparing of this call. I agree in a large part with Lynn and Mitchell on what they have already said. So I'll try and add some other things, or formulate it in another way. And I'm involved in disease-specific and disease overreaching projects, and one of the discussions we have been having, especially in the EU, with the EU clinical trial regulation, which has also put clinical trials more on the forefront for patients because we're supposed to become a bit more involved, is that it is, as Mitchell has given an excellent example about, for a patient, it is intensely difficult to find a trial that would have any impact on his or her disease, signs or symptoms, because it is like going through a wood where many patients can't even recognize the trees, have no idea what they're talking about. So we need to have a way, as there is no place where you can find information on the trials that are being prepared. Usually you hear something when they're sort of at the end. And on the other hand, the information on the trials is pretty incomprehensible for the average patient. It's maybe Mitchell, Lynn, and I, and even sometimes not even us can understand what they're doing. And so I think we have created enormous problems. And as Lynn has said, even if you have found one, then the information on the patient information, the inclusion information is made much too difficult, and it's too difficult for patients to have an idea of what they're really saying yes to. And I recently read an article where they say about 2% of patients take part in clinical trials, and actually I'm not surprised because the hurdles are so high. And in line with what Mitch has said, it's not just a specific disease, it's not just oncology, it's not just, but also looking at, by example, signs and symptoms. We know that in an enormous amount of chronic diseases, things like fatigue or side effects of medication, decreasing specific medication that's detrimental for the patient, are really, really important. And those are not the trials or the research that is published at all. You sort of, so I think there's a lot to do to make it better.
Thank you so much. We're running out of time, unfortunately, but before we jump to the Slido and see if there's any Q&A, I would just want to check if any of you would like to respond to any point that somebody else made. I mean, obviously, Dominique, you were able to address maybe other points now as well, but maybe Mary-Lynne or Mitchell, if there's any point that the other people made that you would like to comment on, please feel free to do so. And then I think we'll check what sort of questions we have on the Slido.
Yes, just one thing that maybe touch on is the role of the treating physician or whoever in this. We haven't mentioned it, but I think this is a key role, because otherwise, as Mitch said, how on earth do you find what trial and matching the trials? And within that is also the time element. How much time does it cost? How much time does the doctor-patient contact time have to be able to discuss the possibility of recruiting for a trial? So just by the way, that quick comment.
And maybe to just build on that. So indeed, I think if such a platform that you have in mind really can assist the consultations, that it goes much smoother, that you give more confidence at the end to the patient. It's first of all, it's about finding a trial, but then also having the confidence to ask the right questions, and also take an informed decision. That's a very important word here, that I think in reality, due to time issues, it's been squeezed into everything, and some patients might perceive this as being under pressure, and this is not, of course, what anyone wants. Not you, not the industry, not the regulators, not the patients. Also, I think what is important is to see in terms of convenience, like when you explain the trials to the patient, like, okay, what does it mean in terms of convenience, in terms of work that you have to skip? We often forget this, and this is a discussion that we had last week in Belgium in a panel. Like, okay, you shouldn't pay patients, of course, like you do in phase 1 trials, but maybe it's wise to open the discussion if you have to take leave from work. Okay, can this be compensated? Because based on the conversations we had with patients, this plays a role. But also in terms of interventions, like tests, and this is happening luckily more and more. like to really show that you tested these protocols with patients to reduce the burden as much as possible, taking into account the comfort of the patient throughout the trial. So I think it's at the end, it's a holistic solution which touches upon so much different angles that maybe in such a platform you can also touch upon this, trying to convince and build a trust with patients to actually get their interest to participate in trials.
Yeah, and if I may add, I completely agree. I was thinking about having such a platform, and I think, yes, there is a need, but there is also a need that there is then one platform for all research clinical trials, so that we're not again sort of, oh no, oh, I know that my XY company might be going into research in my disease area. Oh, they're not in there. How the hell am I going to find it now? So I feel that having as clear as possible communication and as clear as possible have everybody in there. And I think what Mitchell said in also showing where patient experts have been involved in the development of the trial, that would be very beneficial.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad about many of the points that you brought up, because those are also the ones that we as EPF are building upon, or think or see as the main reasons why this platform, or building such a one simplified platform and safe platform, is so important.
I think we have one question in the in Slido. Are financial incentives out of scope? People will walk 10,000 steps for a $10 reduction on their insurance subscription.
Yeah, maybe I can, sorry.
Yeah, I could add something as well. Your insurance subscription and taking part in a clinical trial is something else. But as Mitchell also has said, I think having a sort of upfront reimbursement, saying you take part, you get X amount of money, is not the way we want to go. But there are systems where you can say, and sort of get your travel costs reimbursed. If you need to take part at the time off for work, have a way of reimbursing that. If you have to organize childcare or care for your partner, or your partner has to travel with, these things have been developed and are being developed, and that's what we need to be aware of.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I don't think at the end the financial incentives will, they have to be honest, but they won't, I think, make a very big impact if you will really increase this much more, because then at the end it becomes commercial, so this is forbidden anyway. Yeah? So it will be required to really define where you put the line. And I think, like Dominique just mentioned, if you can keep it simple but honest, I think this will already be much more appreciated by the patients. So yeah, I think it's a combination of especially addressing, okay, what are the gains, because there's a lot of misconceptions as well. Even if you are in a placebo-controlled arm, for example, a lot of people still think, okay, I'll get a dummy drug and it won't help me, so I will only get worse. So at the end, it's about information education that I think plays a more important role than actually a big financial compensation.
Just finally, I think this element of transparency, be honest, and tell people exactly what to expect, what's out there, and facilitate it. Don't make life difficult. It's difficult enough as it is very often. So try and put yourself in the shoes of that particular individual and see how you can make life easier for them.
Yeah, and as Lynn has said, COVID has taught us one thing, that first of all, it's possible to organize clinical trials close to where the patient works or lives, and I think it's all these small things together add to an enormous, if you could call it, on Sean's question, motivation, incentives. Those are good communication, clear communication, giving patients the results of the trial, showing that you are interested in communicating with the trial participants. Those are bigger incentives for patients than giving them money in advance. It depends a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the second question can be answered generally, but briefly. There have been a lot of different types of research finding out what are motivations, incentives, etc. for patients or not in clinical trials. So there is quite a bit of information around, and I think we cannot go into this topic at that stage. But if you start looking in research in publications, you will find quite a lot, Jean. Okay, so I think we need to go into the polling. So the first question, so Hannes, will you take over?
Sure. So the first question we have after this session for everybody is, just think about if you were sick and you would need an innovative treatment, would you use a trial matching platform to look for a suitable trial? And this seems to be a very motivating response for us.
Yeah, I think that goes in the direction that there is, in fact, a big need for such a support and a willingness to participate. Okay, we are here, let's say, a selected group of interested people. So there is a certain type of bias, but I think that 85% yes, 86% of the participants say yes, this is what I would do, I think shows that, the need is there. Okay, next question.
Oh, there it is. If you were in need of finding a suitable trial for yourself, would you be worried about reliable protection of your submitted health data? And this is definitely also an aspect that will come up in the discussions later today.
Yeah.
So it seems that about 3/4 would actually be worried about the reliable protection of their health data.